Mr. Krikorian is present. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. Items 1 through 6 are business improvement districts, very routine. We don't have any cards on them unless somebody would like to speak. Then I would ask for a motion to approve items 1 through 6. That motion has been moved by Mr. Krikorian, and I concur, so that will be the order. Item number 7.
Item number 7 is a Business Tax Advisory Committee document entitled City of Los Angeles Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and it's a set of principles for the Office of Finance to follow to provide consistency in dealing with taxpayers.
Great. Who is reporting on this item? From the department first? Let's, BTAC, if you would step forward, and also the department. I was looking at the principles, and they all seem very acceptable. I don't see anything that's problematic with regard to the principles, and we would only hope to meet the standard in every department that are indicated here. But does the department have a comment about these principles? I understand you already implement these. Is that not correct?
We already have them, yes, as part of our.
Okay.
And no, we have no.
So let me ask, these principles actually came from the Department of Finance. Were they offered to BTAC, or did BTAC resubmit them?
It was a collaboration between BTAC
so there was
and the
a collaboration.
Office of Finance.
And now the Department of Finance has indicated to my staff that they already implement these things. So is that?
That's correct.
So whether or not we do this, the department's going to implement it.
Right. Our only concern is that the city attorney has expressed some legal concerns, and so I recommend that the city attorney be called forward to address those concerns.
Absolutely.
And so we defer to the city attorney.
So I'll cut to the chase. We have a number of bills of rights in the city of Los Angeles. I think 4 or 5 of them, and I need to understand why there would be a concern. Is this different than those, or is this?
There's 2 issues. In tax matters, generally we require taxpayers to challenge by going through the refund procedure, by paying their taxes, then going to court and challenging it through a refund procedure. We've been successful in litigation in upholding our claim procedures by essentially arguing we have a pay first, litigate second rule. I just won this through demur last week. If we have something called a taxpayer bill of rights, a right under California law gives somebody a remedy that then will allow them to get an injunction. There are 2 types of injunctions they could get to enforce their rights under this. One would be a writ of prohibition, one would be a writ of mandate. BTAC brought up several other Bill of Rights that relate with taxes. California has one as a state. The federal government has one. State law under our California Constitution has an anti-injunction provision that prohibits state taxes from being enjoined. You cannot enjoin state collection or in any way interfere with state tax collection through injunction actions. There is no provision like that for municipal taxation. There is also a federal anti-injunction act. Again, does not apply to municipal taxation. So it might sound like a minor issue, but the title of this as a taxpayer bill of rights would give taxpayers the right to enjoin our tax collection activities, which currently taxpayers cannot do. They have to use our claim procedures. It would then interfere administratively with our ability to quickly go through our audit procedures and do things in that fashion.
Is there any particular provision of the principles that you think might trigger problems?
The problem is that the people of Los Angeles, for better or worse, are a litigious bunch, and so what what our fear is that at any point during an audit, if anyone's unhappy with the way that the process is going, they can immediately go to court, say that, for instance, the first one, right to prompt and professional treatment. They could go to court, say, I am not getting prompt and professional treatment. I want you to enjoin they could ask for writ of mandate. I want you to mandate that I get prompt and professional treatment. And then we have to litigate whether they are or are not getting prompt and professional treatment. And if they aren't, they would be enjoined. We would be told to do that. There would be a process in the middle while we're litigating this. Then we would go back. We'd continue the audit. When I was at the Treasury Department, we would occasionally get these cases, despite the fact that there is the Anti-Injunction Act under federal law, and we would.
You don't have a problem with the principles per se?
No. There's nothing in here in itself that's something we don't already provide. The problem is
just Bill of Rights.
It's calling it a Bill of Rights opens up the city to potential litigation, and it's problematic. And there's other language that I had suggested to.
What do you have?
Well, we could call it a commitment to taxpayer service. We could call it a Office of Finance mission statement. There's a variety of things we could call it that's not a Bill of Rights that doesn't.
Keep going.
Well, those are just things that I'm brainstorming. But calling it a taxpayer Bill of Rights is problematic, and those are our concerns.
If you don't mind, I'd just like to respond, the city attorney, based on our
Please
committee.
introduce yourself for the record.
I'm sorry, Mel Cone, BTAC. When our subcommittee addressed creating a Bill of Rights, our due diligence went through about 15, 16 jurisdictions, including the Board of Equalization, Franchise Tax Board, IRS, and other cities and boroughs. The language that was used was either taxpayer Bill of Rights or rights of a taxpayer. So when we did this, we're aware of the city attorney's position. We just have a very difficult time understanding why we are different.
Well, with the Franchise Tax Board, there was a clear difference because the state does not allow injunction against
The Franchise Tax Board is titled Rights of Taxpayers. So,
You know, but there's also an action in law, a statutory provision that exempts them from injunctions. Is that
Right. Section 32 of the California Constitution prohibits injunctive
That's
relief.
different. Is there another example where
Saul Gomez with
this
BTAC
has
also.
been, where something like this has been implemented and it's called the Bill of Rights and there's not been any?
State of New York, I mean, the template for this particular Bill of Rights was pulled directly from the State of New York's website. So, that's a state that I think has done tremendous.
Has the exemption that the state of California has?
That we've not studied, but
See, that's a critical point, I think.
and maybe that's something that we can research, but probably at the city attorney's fingertips in terms of whether the state of New York has that or not.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure that they do. I don't want to say with certainty, though.
You mind holding this for a little while and just letting the city attorney check on it?
I think our recommendation would be to go ahead and move forward with it. The title, perhaps leave it abeyance or call it something temporarily, and let's get more facts on it. I think what we're trying to do here,
Bill of Rights,
we can call it, we can call it the City of Los Angeles commitment to taxpayers and just leave it at that for the time being, or commitment to treat taxpayers equitably, kind of, and lay it out.
Commitment to taxpayers is okay with you?
Commitment to taxpayers is perfectly fine.
We did like the Bill of Rights because it's got a nice. It's got
nice
it's
liberal
got a
sign.
nice
Marketable.
It's got a nice ring. It's a positive connotation. We're all about getting positive connotations for the city amongst the business community.
Business owners have rights too, is what it kind of declares. But
Yeah, and so so if that's possible, we like to see that. But I think you're right. We can research it further,
I'll tell
and
you
there should
what,
be further dialogue.
Why don't we recommend a commitment to taxpayers? You could say Bill of Principles, but this is not a bill. Bill of Rights didn't make any sense for that purpose. It's really about the message and what Bill of Rights sort of stands for, other than the law. And I think so they were looking more at a marketability
Absolutely.
issue than a legal.
Absolutely.
case.
From a legal standpoint, if you call it a commitment to taxpayers, you can still market it as the City of Los Angeles' taxpayer bill of rights, as long as that's not officially what we're calling it. We just can't
Well,
have something.
but you're not going to be able to put that on the website, right? So that's
lawyers
we,
can
we
figure that one
simply
out.
we simply can't have a taxpayer bill of rights for the reasons I set forth.
You know, that sounds like a good solution. Then if Mr. Krikorian would be acceptable, or did you want to make some comment? I do have
That actually expresses that addresses my exact concern, because all of these 10 principles are, to me, very easy to agree with.
Gabriel, did you?
The concern I had, though, was with this, whenever there's a Bill of Rights, there must be a remedy. And that begs the question, what would be the taxpayer's remedy here? And especially at a time when the Office of Finance is already underfunded, and maybe more so before we're finished with all this budget crisis, and providing what every taxpayer finds to be fair and consistent application of the law, or professional treatment, or a clear explanation of rights, it becomes increasingly problematic. And if there's no remedy, then what's the point of having a Bill of Rights? And so my concern is, one, the exposure, but also, can we live up to this? And are we truly committed to living up to this? And I think expressing that commitment is very important. So I think the suggestion of the chair is a very good idea, to move forward now, call it a commitment. Any other issues we can work out as we move forward.
Well, that's interesting. My take on this is that if there's a problem with the implementation of these principles, that really there's political and administrative remedies that don't end up blocking our ability to collect taxes. And so I don't think your intent was for people to end up in court.
absolutely not.
Right. Your
Exactly.
intent was for us to stand by our commitments in terms of these principles. And if you got a problem with a particular claimant or something, they can go to their council member, they can go to the department and file a complaint. There's all kinds of things they can do, and all of that is fine.
Mm-hmm.
So but let me say this. I don't believe you introduced yourself, Mr. Greif. I'm sorry.
Lloyd Greif, and you had, and Saul Gomez also spoke on my left.
That's correct. And Mr. Cohen. We have a couple of cards on this. Gabriel from the mayor's office. Gabriel, how do you pronounce your name, your last name? Sermano, okay. Just like it's spelled. Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm just here to, on behalf of the mayor's office, to support BTAC's recommendation. I think the committee's decision to move forward and figure out what the actual title will be called is fantastic. I think the content and the city's commitment to that content is the most important thing here, and support it moving forward.
In terms of marketing this, you could still say it's a Bill of Rights, but it's not. It doesn't have the legal implications. Thank you, Maya Zettler.
Good afternoon, Maya Zettler on behalf of VICA. VICA is here today to support moving forward with this, and we want to thank BTAC for their leadership and commitment, and thank the council members and the committee for moving forward on this so quickly. We feel that this will be a set of guidelines and principles that taxpayers can turn to and that the city can market in order for us to show that we do have a commitment to fairness and consistency, and that we want to move forward on this as quickly as possible. So we thank you for your time, and if there's anything that we can do, we will stand forward to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I came into this meeting thinking this was going to be one of those situations where we got a little concerned and we blocked the whole process, but I'm glad that we were able to work that out. And so then the recommendation, and I believe Mr. Krikorian concurs, is that we approve the principles and amend the title to be declared a commitment to the taxpayers as opposed to a Bill of Rights.
Understood.
And in terms of revisiting it, after we've done some further research, we can discuss it with the city attorney's office. Would it need to go back to your committee, Councilmember
Actually, I think
Alarcon?
you should work with the Department of Finance and the city attorney.
Of course.
And
Let's-
see if you can come up with a marketing that satisfies your
Yeah, in point of fact, based on our conversations with Ed Cabrera in particular in the Office of Finance, they had no issue with calling it the Bill of Rights. That's why you see it issued to you, submitted to you from them by that. And so hopefully we can address the city attorney's concerns, because I think that somebody would actually use this as a basis to bring litigation against the city for what seems to be some pretty basic things here was, I think, stretching things just a tad.
I don't.
yeah,
think
I
it's
don't
fair.
either.
I understand that.
I
You don't
can
have to be
guarantee
honest.
it.
I suppose there are people like
I
that.
will guarantee it, in fact. And I won't give a legal opinion off the top of my head, work with the city attorney, but I'm guessing that if you say commitment to taxpayers and then commonly referred to as the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, I suspect that would probably work. But, yeah, if it's in here, trust me, somebody's going to say this is their right and they're entitled to a judicial remedy.
Well,
In fact, lots of people will.
Yeah, amongst the tens of thousands of businesses that we have. Just takes one. Anyway,
Enough said, I think.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item number
We
8.
stay here because I think we're at item number 8
Please,
as well.
yes.
Item number A is a BTAC communication recommending the city draft an RFP and seek proposals for an economic study to determine the fiscal impact of certain BTAC recommendations relative to business tax issues. This item was continued from the meeting of June 8th, 2010.
Yes, is Mr. Parks staff person here? You knew I was gonna. Oh yeah, we have a car now. So the desire of BTAC is to get an RFP to do a study on a variety of proposals that they are studying. Mr. Parks has raised an interesting issue, or I should say his staff with my staff. So I would like to ask Purvi Doshi to explain the councilman's position. He's unable to attend at this time.
Correct. Purvi Doshi with Councilmember Park's office. In response to item 8, the councilmember would like the committee to consider using the CEO report that was recently approved in Budget and Finance Committee yesterday. The CEO report is in response to a Garcetti-Smith motion proposing that the city establish an Office of Economic Analysis, a group that will be responsible for economic impact analysis, as well as a process for incorporating the use of economic impact analysis in legislative decision-making. The OEA will analyze the likely impacts of legislation on business attraction and retention, job creation, tax and fee revenues to the city, and other matters relating to the overall economic health of the city. And what was approved was basically authorizing the CEO to prepare and release an RFQ to establish a panel of qualified as-needed consultants to perform economic analysis, establish a panel and use the qualified consultants to perform in-depth independent economic analysis of legislative proposals as requested. The money has already been identified in CD13 discretionary funds. So the council member basically feels like it's kind of a duplicate.
Wait, in CD13?
CD13 discretionary funds. $250,000, I believe, have been set aside for this Office of Economic Analysis position.
How much of that is for studies?
Or
Or is that just for staffing?
You know, I'm not
And
quite
I noticed
sure.
it's an RFQ, not an RFP. so
RFQ, correct.
RFQ is a symbol for, we'd like to do this, but we don't have any money.
Right. And, as ideas come back, the study will cost this much, then, from that pot.
It comes out of the 250?
Correct.
Or you're not sure?
Is what I believe.
As you can see, it seems like we're trying to do the same thing. Now, Mr. Parks established this committee, or Mr. Garcetti did.
Yeah, it came out of a
CD13.
motion from Garcetti and Smith.
And it's his money.
It's his money. And, from what I've heard, and this could be a rumor, but I think other council offices were interested in committing some of their discretionary funds towards the RFP that is being discussed today. If, I don't know if that money could also go towards this other proposal, the 250, adding it onto the 250.
Just to try and think aloud here, the notion is that we should be able to combine these two efforts and produce a document.
It appears that they're both asking for the same.
It
the
seems
same
that
thing.
the money is more clearly present in Garcetti's action. We have no money here. One of the concerns I have is I didn't want to go to an RFQ if we can get an RFP. The recommendation here is, since we don't have money, it's not my recommendation, but CLA's recommendation to go to RFQ. City Attorney's recommendation to go to RFQ, and I don't even want to go to RFQ if we can find a way to get to RFP. So I would have said, well, let's just wait and see if we can find the money. But now, since we're establishing an office that essentially will be doing the same things that you're asking for here, I don't know that we shouldn't work with that effort. They're going to use the same process: RFP, RFQ, whatever.
Go ahead.
You're representing
We'll
Mr.
reserve
Garcetti?
until.
Guy Lipa from Council President Garcetti's office.
Great.
So the Council President, while some of the work can be done through this future Office of Economic Impact, however, it comes to light, is very interested in having this is fine with an RFQ and having the RFQ go forward. The $250,000 came from discretionary funds from last year that have now been swept, and we are working on funding this through our discretionary funds in the future years. But because we aren't exactly sure how much it's going to cost and where the money is, where the money's coming from, we would be fine with an RFQ to figure out how much money is necessary for this, and then we will find the money in the future, in our future.
So does the $250,000 cover studies as well? It could.
Hold on, I'm getting the. So it's I normally don't. I'm filling in for Marcel, who normally is here, so I'm just sort of on the fly here. But it's 1290 funds, and yeah. So it's our 1290 funds. So we're trying to figure out for the future years. It will cover study, but it will cover mainly a year's worth of operations of whatever this office is going to
I have the CA.
So it's not just.
It's part of the shared sacrifice?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I have the CA report in front of me if you want me to read the part where it talks about the $250,000.
Please do.
We note that funding has been set aside for this. Okay. The council would then direct the CEO to facilitate a contract to conduct the analysis and identify, for the purposes of this council's adoption of this motion.
Well, let me see if I can sort of cut to the chase. I believe there needs to be a discussion between BTAC and Mr. Garcetti, and perhaps Mr. Parks as well, about how we can, in other words, if the economic, what are we calling this place?
Office of Economic Analysis.
Office of Economic Analysis. If the Office of Economic Analysis agrees to do the study, to do an RFP on a study, then problem solved. If they don't, or if they want to do some of it, then we'll at least identify some funding. And so what Mr. Garcetti, staff member, is representing is that he wants us to move forward with an RFQ. If we do an RFQ, all that's going to tell us is about how much it's going to cost. The problem with RFQs is when there's no real cash behind it, a lot of people say, I'm not going to waste my time applying for it.
Yeah.
And
that would be a real problem.
We do have a variety of groups and offices that are willing to chip in, and that we've been in discussions with to chip in and pay.
Well, my only point is I think there's an opportunity here to put it all together without having separate pieces moving along.
Our strong recommendation, council members, would be to proceed with the RFP as scoped out by the Office of Finance in conjunction with BTAC. If you look on pages, if I could direct the committee's attention to pages 7 and 8 of the RFP, which lays out the scope of services to be provided, you can see at the very top it says what the contractor is going to review and analyze, and then those 5 points.
Wait, what am I looking at?
So you're on page 7. It says scope of services. On the top of the page, do you have the same pagination that I have?
I've got something different.
Perhaps you do. You go to section 2, scope of services, whatever page that might be in your document.
7?
Yeah, it's 7 on mine.
What am I looking at? Mine is different.
It's this document.
Well, let me look at Paul.
But I'd like, it'd be
Go
great if
ahead.
the two of you look at it at the same
Okay,
time. But
go ahead.
Marissa has it. She's in the document. That's the right document. I can tell from this distance.
It's
Page
not
7,
page
Marissa,
7.
or does it not have
I
pagination?
got page 7.
Okay,
We're looking at-
so if you look at the top of it, it talks about the selected contractors will review and analyze the overall revenue impact of rate changes, limits, so obviously caps,
Oh, okay.
addition of a new classification, inclusion of various incentives, and various changes in the actual calculation. And then you look farther down, what we're looking for, really, among other things, a predictive model, so that you can. We're hoping that as a result of this RFP, it'll be a predictive model so that Office of Finance, City Council, Mayor's Office can actually have the ability to try different things and see what the impact will be. So building this model, and then looking specifically at the 8 proposals that are here. This is
I
going
don't think
to.
anybody has any problem with the scope of service.
Right, I think-
The problem is we need to identify the money to pay for it. And an
Understood.
RFP is essentially telling people, we've got X amount of dollars available for, or sometimes we don't tell them the amount, but we've got, we're going to be doing this study, how much will you do it for? Or we say, we've got $100,000, would you be interested in proposing? If we do an RFQ, all we're saying is, how much would it cost if we did a study like this? And it includes
Right.
the various, but it doesn't commit dollars.
No, we think it is important to do an RFP. We think to put it out there and have people respond in terms of what money you're going to actually understand, what money you're going to put aside. As you indicated, sometimes you put it out there without giving a target dollar amount. I think.
No, I never said that.
I
No, you
thought
right
I
now
just heard you
mentioned
say
it?
that. I think you said that
I did.
sometimes you say 100,000 is what we put aside, and sometimes you say go ahead and submit. I think one of the things you'll look at is we're hoping, and we talked later in this document about what the qualifications, the expected qualifications are, and how they'll make a selection in terms of weightings for the contractor that gets the nod. But in terms, we want to get the clock rolling on this. If you look at the work that BTAC has done over the past 6 months, we've kind of bifurcated into 3 subcommittees. All of those subcommittees have come up with a variety of things, some of which is this commitment to taxpayers that we just talked about, which really doesn't have any financial impacts, and some of which clearly will have financial impacts. We hope will help in terms of job creation and business attraction. We think this will do so even more so. Getting this to a point where it can go before City Council so they can take action is what this is all about. A lot of thought, a lot of work has gone into this. Office of Finance is on board, I believe. I believe everybody else, I think City CAO is on board. Our understanding is that there is or there will be money for this. We don't know. Part of the problem is we don't know is it going to be 100,000, is it going to be 150,000.
Is the Office of Finance willing to pay for this study? So I don't see them being on board. I mean,
Alicia Vega, Office of Finance. We don't have money in this year's budget. In the past, for the prior study, we issued the RFP and we recommended that the respondents come back with a dollar figure, and so that's what we're proposing this time.
is RFQ.
It was an RFP.
No, it's RFP, yeah.
Yes.
But an RF, what, I'm sorry.
Just not setting a dollar target, letting people respond based on what they could or couldn't do it for.
So my understanding,
You have
when,
something to say?
Yeah. John Wickham with the CLA's office. Just a little bit of a clarification. An RFQ simply asks for bidders to provide their professional qualifications on a broad subject area. Okay. So it doesn't refer to a specific study. It doesn't refer to costs that may be associated with it. An RFP outlines a very specific scope of work and asks for not only their qualifications, but their ability to complete that scope of work and the cost associated with that. So there's a little bit of...
There's no commitment to dollar amount.
In the proposal that you have before you from BTAC, there has been no identification of the potential cost because there's no idea of how much this kind of a study will cost.
Okay.
Think Field of Dreams.
Mr. Garcetti said that he would be okay with, you represented for Mr. Garcetti that he would be okay with an RFQ. Would he be okay with an RFP that was...
He's fine with an RFP.
Okay.
We're fine with moving this. Mr. Garcetti would like this to move forward.
Okay. I still believe, however, that the point that Mr. Parks makes, even when he's not present. Mr. Parks is present, by the way. He's here and will speak for himself in just a minute. But the point raised by his staff that he's concerned about, about setting up an Office of Economic Analysis and then doing an RFP outside of that. In other words, I believe there's an opportunity to have conversations about how to conduct both at the same time. So it would, right now, without any further discussion, my intent would be to approve the RFP, send it on to council, but direct BTAC to work with Councilmember Garcetti's office to see if there's a way to bring these two items under the same umbrella.
And there is a way, I think. We talk about submitting the proposal in such a way that you phase it for the type of work that's done. If it turns out that some of this work can be done by the new Office of Economic Analysis, then you just adjust the response accordingly and the cost accordingly. So I think.
Let me just, one of the things, the reason I have a concern is that it looks like we're going out for an RFQ and RFP for the same people. We're looking for economists to evaluate material. And putting them on a bench and what the expectation, the way the CAO said, they intend to have a bench of people that when you give them a study, they can go to that bench and say, can you do this and what will it cost? That's the same thing it appears we're doing here. So we were looking to see, like I said, how do you merge them? Because you're talking to the same group of people.
And I think we agree with that concept that eventually you do need a bench, of professionals, consultants, of professionals and consultants to do a variety of different economic analysis. However, in this case, time is of the essence. We're on board for 18 months. It's been 6 months, so that means we've got 12 months on. Once you establish this bench, and once you establish what this bench is going to do, you're looking at maybe another 4 or 5 months going down the road.
You're not going to go any faster any other way, because what will slow you down is you don't have the revenue to create the study. So
now,
the thing is, you can talk about speed, you can talk about RFQs, but if you get to the point that you have to pay for it, that's going to be your slow point.
And Councilmember Parks, I'm not sure that the $250,000 that's being discussed for your panel is going to get you this panel, the administrative costs associated with it, and the kind of study we're talking about here, sir.
No one has said that is the issue. All Mr. Garcetti did was gave some seed money. Everybody realizes, depending on how far you go with the studies, there can have to be some more money. And the issue is no one's determined where that money's coming from. So
Our thought is that by the time you impanel your committee of economists, this study should be done.
Well, I'd say if you have that money, best of luck. That's all I can give you is my advice.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Parks.
I think I don't have a problem with. Well, we're actually doing two different things. The RFQ is going out of on the economic analysis to ask for qualifications for people to be available to us, for us to have a cadre of economic analysts available to call upon for a variety of things. The RFP is going to offer a specific subject that could be considered by that group, and they may merge together at some point or not. But if we move forward with the RFP, I don't see how that's going to. We can bring them back together at some point, as you said, in part or in full. I would say that given that Mr. Garcetti has offered this money out of his discretionary funds, that I think his colleagues are going to be very mindful of where the money came from. And so I would recommend that you sit down with Mr. Garcetti and try to work out a way to get the $250,000 to help pay for the study. Whether or not we impanel the group or not, we would then, we might be able to do a separate RFP, and Garcetti will introduce another motion to.
I can just say that Mr. Garcetti has a list of things to study as part of the 250. He didn't just, that was
I
not
assume that much.
benevolent.
Yeah.
That was, he has a group of things to be studied, that this will just scratch the surface.
Well, I don't want to question Mr. Garcetti's benevolence.
No, I'm just saying, I'm just saying, if I'm in error, let me know.
Guy Lipa, Council President Garcetti's office. There are a list of things that to be studied, both from Mr. Garcetti and from other offices that affect the entire city. So it's not, it's not a narrow thing. But the $250,000 was set aside not to actually start studying, not to sort of evaluate how to set up this office or anything like that. So I think that it's important to realize that there's two different roles here. There are two different things that are happening, and while there might be some synergy with them, and we can work on that, it's two very separate things that are being worked out.
Okay.
I understand, and I also understand that if we have a good citywide study, other council members might be interested in participating as well. So
We're hoping that as a byproduct of this, there will be a tool, there will be a model that you can use, not just for this, not just in 2010, but going forward.
right. Do you have any problem with sending this forward?
No, I just
Okay.
think we need to know
Where the money is, yeah.
Where the money is, and I mean, because putting people through that effort of creating RFPs and not having any idea of the source of funds is often just work.
Yeah, nobody should take offense to Mr. Parks. He is the where is the money guy, and that's his job. So, Mr. Krikorian, are you okay with this? Yeah. Okay, then we would be.
Mr. Chair, as a point of clarification, the Budget and Finance Committee's report on the establishment of the Office of Economic Analysis is in full council tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. We will send this matter forward with a recommendation to approve an RFP on the specific subjects delineated, recognizing that some of them, there may be some tailoring as we move forward, but that, that we recognize that we have to find a funding source if we implement the RFP.
Thank you.
But again, we urge BTAC to work with Mr. Garcetti to more fully explore the concepts.
We will do so immediately. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 8?
9.
Item number 9.
Oh, by the way, on item number 8, let me just say that
Oh, jeez.
Gabriel, you all right? Where's Gabriel? There he is. You all right on that? You had a card in, but you're okay? Okay, great.
Our card was on 7 through 8, but we might as well tack on 9. On 9 as well. Sorry.
Yeah, on item number 8, the one we just did, I just wanted to mention something. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, one of the studies is related to an item that I'm actually thinking of moving forward without a study. So it will be flexible as we move forward, okay?
What item is that, council member?
It has to do with the producers.
Got it.
The mid-sized producers. Okay. Then I'd like to move on to item number 9, which is the business tax holiday.
Item number 9 is a motion, Alarcon Smith Rosenthal, to request the city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance to amend the LA Municipal Code section, the new business tax exemption, which removes the $500,000 qualification threshold of the new business tax exemption, extends the exemption to 3 years, and provides a definition for a new business.
Okay. This is fairly self-explanatory. It would extend a business tax exemption to new businesses up to the $500,000 threshold. Currently, what is it? Does anybody have the current exemptions?
It is up to 500,000. It is up to 500,000. That's the current exemption.
No, but it's only for
2 years. 2 years, council member.
2 years, and it's
New businesses.
What are the exemptions?
I'm sorry. It's a 2-year exemption. There's a threshold of $500,000 to qualify.
Gross receipts.
And there are exclusions. There's exclusions for contractors and motion picture producers. And a business must not have been in business in the prior year to be considered new.
Okay, so the difference between what we now have and this motion is what?
No cap, and it can be anything not capped at 500,000.
Obviously, it would be all new businesses, and it would be
3 years.
3 years.
Mm-hmm. And actually, in our RFP, number 7 of those 8 points is this one.
And no cap.
Slightly modified, right, but no cap, exactly.
Right.
So we actually included it in the scope of our RFP, although the mayor, and I don't know if Gabriel Sermeno is still here, the mayor's office apparently commissioned a study from USC relating to this.
Yes, and I believe, I guess we do not have, is the professor who conducted the study present? So, why don't you come up forward? Can you very quickly explain the theory of how this works?
Oh, sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I was contacted by the mayor's office to examine the potential impact of this issue, and I gladly volunteered my time over the last couple of months to...
State your name.
Oh, my name is Professor Charles Swenson. I'm at the Marshall School of Business at down the street at USC.
Mm-hmm.
And was asked by the mayor's office to examine this issue of a 3-year exemption for new businesses, fiscal impact, jobs impact, and that sort of thing. And I've volunteered my time to examine this issue over the last couple of months. The basic conclusion is that based on very standard methodology and theory and economics, that this exemption would result in an increase in employment for the city. And my best estimate's about 55,000 permanent jobs, and also slightly increase the general tax base of the city of Los Angeles. It's based on economic theory and also some data which I have, which is very firm specific to the city.
Okay, so by collecting less, we get more.
Yes, the basic idea is that in economics there's a certain what we call elasticity for demand and supply of things, and so the lower the price, the more that's demanded or supplied. In the economics literature, the elasticity for such tax rate increases is about negative 0.21. So what that means is for every 1% tax cut, you'll experience a 0.21% increase in business activity. Just working through the math for a 3-year exemption, and then looking at standard multipliers, we come up with the estimates that I have. The basic idea is that by cutting taxes, you're going to increase the desirability of businesses to locate in Los Angeles through reduced costs. Location of those additional businesses actually increase the general business tax base because they're going to demand goods and services from other Los Angeles businesses, who in turn will pay gross receipts taxes and also will pay the city's 1% sales tax. So adding the gross receipts tax, the increased base there, plus the sales tax together, plus there's also going to be an increased sales tax collection from more people working in the city.
Yeah. So in this case, we're replacing business tax with sales tax by the virtue of creating jobs and consumers who purchase goods. I mean, one example would be the sales tax would increase.
Yes.
Okay. Revenue from sales tax.
Yeah. The general increase. There's the general increase would be more due to the sales tax.
Property tax, sales tax.
Yes.
All the others.
Through standard multiplier analysis.
At some point, it breaks down, right? At some point, if you go too many years, or now, how do you factor in other jurisdictions in the area that provide similar relief to businesses?
They actually, most cities don't provide similar relief, at least in the local Southern California area. Other cities which I've studied have provided similar relief in the past, and that's what derives the 0.21 elasticity measure that I was talking about.
Okay.
But I think, Mr. Chair, one thing you might be addressing is the fact that this would make Los Angeles more competitive relative to other cities.
Exactly.
More competitive, and also competitive to, because we are a global market, more competitive to national and international firms.
Now maybe Mr. Parks can answer this question as well, but did you look at the current tax relief that was generated about 3 years ago for the exemptions for new businesses up to 500,000, and do we have this a similar kind of growth?
We do. What I need is more specific data from the city to exactly calibrate that effect from 3 years ago.
Mr. Parks, do you know if the CAO has analyzed that at all?
I think they've done that, and it's probably a little more difficult today because we had this downsize in business tax around the same time that this 500 cap came in. So we have not looked at that, but again, it could be very difficult to figure out what the compression of the overall economy is versus what impact that particular program.
Notwithstanding the difficulty of getting all the information we'd like to get, the reason I introduced this motion is because I feel the worst thing we could do is not act and not do something. And although very mindful of our budget condition, and if we go with theory, then there will be a net gain to the city in terms of revenue. Theories are theories, and we never know what's going to happen in terms of federal and state policy that might impact this, or the world economy for that matter. So I just felt that we needed to move forward with this on the theory that reducing taxes will send a new message from Los Angeles that we're more business friendly and more people would be interested in investing, or those who might be on the cusp of deciding whether or not to take the risk to enter into business will then be pushed over to say, well, I'll take the risk for that. It seems to be moving in the right direction.
One of the reasons why BTAC was clearly totally in sync with this proposal is the issue we see with the previous or the current new business tax exemption and its cap of 500,000 is it's not doing anything to attract very large employers to the region. And by removing that cap, you're going to get multinational. You're going to get, one of the issues that LA has is we're not home to very many Fortune 500. There's as many Fortune 500s here in LA as there are, frankly, in LA County, let alone LA City, as there are in Denver, which I don't think anybody views us as it being a comparable economy to Denver. So by removing that cap, you are putting yourself in a position where you can be extremely competitive for large employers. And if you want to move the needle, that's the kind of firm you want to attract.
Well, and I think this can be taken beyond the theoretical. With BTAC 1, you did decrease the business tax across the board for a particular set of businesses, and I think Mel, this number by heart, but I think the increase in the gross receipts tax went up by, was it 200 million from the last base that you had?
Just in response to Sal's question, in the year 2000, business tax receipts were approximately $300 million. I believe last year it was approximately $450 million. This was in addition to BTAC 1's tax reform of $92 million. That was tax savings. And just to add, as our chair stated, businesses that are over $500,000 are not coming here now, so it isn't, you aren't losing anything. But what they bring, as the professor pointed out, it is the multiplier effect, that they are bringing other businesses, other local vendors use them, and we've proven this.
Jobs.
Yeah, and jobs.
Although I do want to say that, and I'll say this every time somebody wants to focus, I think the professor will back me up on this, that the true job growth in the city of Los Angeles is actually the smaller businesses. So we don't want, that's why we had the $500,000 cap, because we recognize that. But we're also recognizing that business growth at any level is going to be beneficial to our general economy and the city's revenue stream. Am I not correct, Professor, that small businesses are actually driving more job creation and more economic stimulus than the larger businesses?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. I'm glad he said that. Okay, let's see. We have a few cards on this. Peter Repovich. Los Angeles Police Protective League.
Good afternoon, esteemed council members. Probably wouldn't think that we'd be coming talking to a jobs committee on economic stuff, and that labor is just our only issue. But I will say that the board of directors of the Police Protective League has said and has come across to the world now that business is very important to the city of Los Angeles. We want to draw as many people here as we can. I went to the same school that the professor came from, and the multiplier effect, we've seen it work in a variety of ways. The same reason we get people to come to our conventions, there's a multiplier effect. We support this tax endeavor. We think it should be a broad-based deal so that it actually works. I think, Councilmember Alarcon, your comment that you don't want to be guilty of not doing anything is valid. Very important that we do something, we do it hard, we do it fast, and we react, because the economy is not doing really well, and we can really help ourselves in Los Angeles. This is a long, old issue statewide that we drive business away from us, and we have an opportunity here, given our current climate, to do something about it. And I just would like everybody to know on council that the board will support and help in that way, in any way we can, to make sure that we bring business to Los Angeles. So that's it.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No questions.
You got it. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Gabriel, did you want to? Okay.
Hello again, Gabe Sermeno with the Mayor's Office. I want to just quickly thank the chair and the committee for his leadership in this motion. We'd like to thank Professor Swenson.
We haven't voted yet.
Well, we like the motion in and of itself, so we want to thank Professor Swenson for providing the analysis to support this endeavor. I want to thank BTAC for their work in the comprehensive business tax reform, and just say that we think this is going to provide a vital shot in the arm for the economy immediately, and help make Los Angeles more competitive with its regional and global neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And please extend my gratitude to the Mayor's Office for their leadership on this issue.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any objection to moving this forward as is?
Well, a number of questions.
Okay, please. Mr. Krikorian?
Mel, you said that Fortune 500 companies aren't currently moving here, and the big companies aren't moving here, and that's, I think, anecdotally, I think we can describe that phenomenon. But we just got finished discussing the need to contract out an economic analysis for BTAC's other recommendations, and on this motion, we're talking about lifting the cap on a new business tax exemption without any economic analysis on real data and its impacts to speak of at all. And so I'm a little concerned about this, and especially the extension for 3 years, because we don't have complete data on the impact of the existing new business tax exemption policy, as was just discussed. We don't have very many other cities that are appropriate models for this, because there's only a handful of cities that even have a gross receipts tax in California. So I don't think we can necessarily find that, the policy comparisons for reductions in new business tax, new businesses' taxes. And I'm concerned a little bit about the competitive impact that this has, too, for our existing businesses who are here, the businesses in my district that are already struggling right now, and having to pay the full freight of business tax when we would be giving exemptions to new large businesses to come into Los Angeles for 3 years. I think the new business tax exemption as it is makes a lot of sense, because you're basically supporting homegrown entrepreneurial new businesses, people starting businesses in Los Angeles because they're here. But to lift the lid on this in the theory that it might attract Fortune 500 companies, I I don't see the evidence to support that. For example, if you're a Fortune 500 company making the extraordinarily expensive decision about where to locate, gross receipts tax is certainly going to be a big part of your decision. But if you're making that decision, you're planning to stick around presumably longer than 3 years. So why would a Fortune 500 company move to Los Angeles rather than Glendale or Burbank or Santa Clarita or any other city in this area to gain a 3-year gross receipts tax exemption when they could move to those cities and get a forever gross receipts tax exemption?
So there are reasons. I think your points are all well taken, Councilmember Krikorian. My first response would be, in our RFP, we are actually looking at examining this issue. So I understand you basically had the mayor's office and BTAC moving in the same direction without a lot of interchange between the two. At least on our side, we were not aware of this proposal when it came forth until the day before. In our proposal, so we were talking about having our proposal studied along with 7 other proposals that have economic impact. We found out the day before the press release. That is correct.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
More
it was actually the evening before,
get.
So it was probably 12 hours. It wasn't even a full 24 hours. That's another matter. We're neither here nor there, frankly. Ours proposal isn't for 3 years. It's for 5 years, but not 5 years the way you might think. If you look at it, it's 3 years of a total exemption and then a phase in to full taxation. Okay. 2/3 exemption, then 1/3 exemption, then you're full bear. With respect to attracting Fortune 500, as an example, and I'll reference the LA EDC and obviously the efforts of the city, both the city council and the mayor's office, in attracting BYD. So BYD is, Build Your Own Dreams, is that energy car company out of China that has announced that their U.S. headquarters is going to be located here in downtown Los Angeles. One of the reasons is clearly available real estate, and available real estate with perfect signage where all of the commuters are going to be going right by, which is there's a building right by the Harbor Freeway that comes into downtown. So, perfect visibility for them. And that's another reason. You're talking about a very important market. So being located in Los Angeles, yes, the tax exemption certainly makes sense, but there's other reasons why you'd want to be here versus perhaps in Glendale where you won't get the same amount of traffic going by every day. In terms of making it more competitive, let's come back to the whole issue about Fortune 500. We're losing them. We lost DaVita last year, and that was a Los Angeles-based company that picked up and left without anybody having the ability to stop them. So we know we don't have evidence that we can get them, but we know we certainly might have evidence that we can retain what we have before we lose another one. And if we lose another one like Northrop, at the rate of 1 or 2 every few years, that's pretty damaging, both to the image of the city from a business perspective, as well as to the employment in the city.
Exactly, but that's not what this does, and that's part of my point, is that this doesn't go to business retention.
If I might add,
correct, but what we're trying, some of our other proposals do, by the way. But this one, I understand your point, and I understand. So I don't think this one, in and of itself, taken in a vacuum, is going to address your last point, which is what do I do about my existing constituency. I think if you look at our other 7 proposals, a lot of them do address that, and so that's why we have a uniform approach here, as opposed to just pushing forward with one. Are we an objection to you moving forward with one with the other ones lagging behind? No, because we do think, coming back to Councilmember Alarcon's comment, we think you need to act. The more you can do and the sooner you can do it, I think the better. Is this an economic analysis that was performed by Professor Swenson as complete or as thorough as it could have been? No, because obviously there's information that he just indicated wasn't at his disposal from Office of Finance and what have you. Go ahead, Sal. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest reason why this particular item, we support and are behind 100% is mainly because it doesn't require to be revenue neutral. This is revenue that's not currently within the city coffers. This is going to be new businesses coming in, generating new revenue, and so therefore it doesn't need to be studied because of its revenue neutrality issue. However, in order to give a more comprehensive approach, meaning addressing existing businesses while addressing second, third-year businesses while addressing Fortune 500 businesses, because we are looking at diminishing the tax burden on those types of companies, that does affect revenue and doesn't make it revenue neutral and therefore does need to be studied.
Yes, except, and I get that distinction, but as Lloyd raised the BYD example, you have some major corporations that, despite all of the things that people say about business being, Los Angeles being business unfriendly, Los Angeles does have certain advantages that does attract businesses to want to be here still. With all the difficulties that we have, with all the challenges, businesses are still wanting to locate here because it's Los Angeles for a variety of other reasons, because of any number of positive attributes about this city that we have. So one of my concerns would be that there are some businesses out there in the pipeline that are making plans now to settle, to move to Los Angeles. So now we move forward and we lift this cap and we say that, a $10 million a year, $100 million a year company comes into Los Angeles tax-free for 3 years. That's not revenue neutral, because if that decision was already being made to be here, and we go ahead and push forward with lifting the new business tax exemption, we have lost 3 years of tax revenues that we otherwise would have had. It's in this. I hate to keep raising the film and television production tax incentive, but one of the criticisms of the film and television production tax incentive is that some of those films that are produced here now would have been here with or without the incentive. I can agree or disagree with that, but that argument could be made. You could say the same thing about new businesses in Los Angeles. Some of them will come, as BYD did, with or without this. So are we producing a net gain or not when you take that into consideration? Is it revenue neutral? I don't know. It might be. It might be a net plus. It might be a net negative. I don't know. But we don't have the evidence to guide us, and that is my concern.
As the maker of the motion, let me say that, first of all, the target was not Fortune 500 companies. The target is broad-based businesses. $500,000 is the threshold, far from Fortune 500 companies. We're talking about creating small businesses, essentially, and I think the largest benefactor of this will be the small business sector, where the job creation is actually more intensive than in Fortune 500 companies. It's great to get a 20,000 job business to come to your neighborhood, but all the effort spent on that could detract from the effort to create 40,000 jobs in the small business sector. So then I would also use your film tax credit and say the proof is in the pudding.
It's worked pretty well.
The fact is, just today we received another report that filming is continuing to grow. And so I believe the undeterminable factor here is what kind of message we are sending. And I believe that message is very powerful, especially when it is repetitive and redundant. And is that redundant and repetitive? Is that redundant and repetitive as well? But
it can be repetitive without being redundant, and we hope that it will be.
But the point is that that the more actions we take to send the message that Los Angeles is more and more and more business friendly, I believe that it creates a sort of snowball effect where businesses start getting it. And so the purpose here is to do this in an area where we know that we can't count the revenue that, the people that are considering it. But we also have to say that even those who are considering it might also be considering moving to Glendale or to Burbank or someplace else. And otherwise, they wouldn't be considering it. They'd be done. So we need to be more proactive in that regard. Finally, I also believe that one of the toughest problems for small businesses today is access to capital and financing. And to the extent that we reduce their immediate costs, knowing that 90% of these businesses fail in the first year of operation, that will enhance their opportunities to get past the third year. I mean, we just because you move in and create a business doesn't mean you're going to be around in 4 years when 90% of the businesses are failing in one. We want to get them to go further than that, to 2, 3, 4, and permanency. Once they get to the third year, they're done. They're in. They're permanent. But we got to get them past the first hurdle. And although it may be appear to be a small amount for a small business, given the tight financing situation, I believe every little bit is going to count more than in good times.
Most new businesses start small, right? And they all have varying degrees of growth. I think one of the things that this does by removing the cap is actually has an opportunity to get businesses that are existing businesses to relocate. And that relocation is something that I'm not sure is happening, certainly to the extent that we'd like to see it happen. The other thing is...
Can I ask one more quick question of the professor, please, if he's still there?
Paul, can I ask, Mr. Parks has to leave.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let me just one request in the comment. Just that as this ordinance goes forward, if we could make sure Office of Finance and CAO are part of that review. One thing I'd just like to say in the sense that, and I had the same struggle that Paul had about whether this is cost effective on its face, and the way I came down on it was that it's as opposed to money we're spending, it's money we're not getting. We will, if it's successful, you'll get the money from property tax and sales tax and people buying houses and a variety. Now, whether that matches what you would have gotten in business tax, you'll only know that down the road. And so it's one of those issues that you are going to go forward in hopes that these other tax bases are filled up. The other thing I think that's important is that, and we asked the Department of Finance to actually tell us how many businesses came in the city under the 500 cap, because that would also be an indication of how successful that was. And I agree with Richard, is that this is not about Fortune 500 and 20,000 employees. This is about medium-sized businesses becoming larger and small business becoming medium. But I think we also have to realize that our city, even if asked, could not provide space for 20,000 employees. So where would you put them, and where would you create a plant? We just are not in that situation to be able to accommodate that. And I know that Mel has these numbers down pat as far as what the business tax has, but I don't think any one element caused that increase in business tax to go up, because nobody's taking credit for it going down. And the same people are here paying business tax. So the issue is that I think there was the city's efforts to reduce business tax paid some dividends, but we also were in a cycle of a trend of business tax going up over the last decade. So now that it's down, no one's saying, well, business tax was the reason for that, the cut. But I think it's one of those gambles you take in saying, well, if all of this works and these other tax bases are filled up, you will get the benefit of those types of businesses coming in, particularly if people live locally, particularly if they put their kids in school and they buy cars and all that other stuff. So it's not going to be a direct business tax. It's going to be a cumulative effect of the other bases. That's how we finally came down on it and said it makes sense, because if they were asking us to give up the money, it'd be a totally different story.
And I agree with all those points, and I agree very much with this concept. I think it makes a great deal of sense. But I read the.
I don't want to lose Mr. Parks' vote.
Yeah, okay. I read the study on the elevator ride up.
Wait.
So that's my concern.
Are you okay with moving forward, or?
What, Mr. Parks? Why don't you say when we go ahead and vote, because I think I'm going to lay off.
I'm sorry. Can I say something
Yes.
before your vote?
Okay.
Well, very quickly.
Yes. The Office of Finance has a problem with the definition of a new business the way it currently reads in the motion. We'd like it to basically be the current definition, that the current definition remain. And so I think the city attorney has legal issues with that. So I'd like to.
Did we change it by?
I'd like to defer to the city attorney.
Here we go.
Is this something that we can change in council?
Well, let me just say very briefly, we're working on drafting the ordinance. We have a draft version, but I don't believe we can follow the language that's set forth in the motion. We can discuss this in council if you're going to vote to send it forward.
And in between?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we understand there may be some definition language changes, but if we can move forward with the concept and get it to council, I'm just fearful that we lose Mr. Parks' vote.
Of course. And again, Office of Finance does have concerns they wish to convey.
So I'd be happy to meet with you on those changes. Okay. I appreciate that. So with that, I'd like to take a vote on sending this to council as is. Mr. Parks moves, and I concur.
Add me to the consent items.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we're adding Mr. Parks to the 6 consent items. And Mr. Krikorian, I take it
I'm a no for the time being.
You could be, he can abstain, right?
He can vote no, and the report still goes forward with 2 ayes and 1 no. It goes forward as a positive recommendation.
But can he abstain in committee?
Not if he's here.
No? Okay.
For the record, it's for the time being.
Okay.
And Mr. Alarcon, are we?
Not be reflected.
Are we adding Mr. Parks' additions that Office of Finance and CAO review once the tax is in place, and that Office of Finance lists businesses that came in under the $500,000 cap, and we are not going to ask for the ordinance to include a definition for a new business that's still in flux? Is that correct?
We're going with the
like 1 and 2, but not
as
3.
stated, but we're going to be meeting with the city attorney and the Office of Finance to clarify, and if we need an amendment, we'll come back in council.
Okay.
Okay. Then that would be the order, and thank you very much. And so if you could get with Marissa to schedule an appointment as quickly as possible.
Yes, I will.
When would this be going to council?
Well, the soonest it could go would be next Tuesday.
That might be a little too soon. Can we make it Friday?
Certainly.
We'll target for Friday, so that means we have to move quickly.
Right. Our draft is complete. It's in the review process, so I can meet as whenever.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Still, Professor, is there data that demonstrates impacts of reduction in the gross receipt tax for different sizes of business? In other words, is there any data or studies that have shown whether the impact is the same for small, medium, large businesses? Can that be determined?
Not based on what I've seen in literature on municipal taxes.
Okay.
There are different elasticities for studies on federal taxes and larger dollar amounts like corporate income taxes, but not on this.
Okay. Thank you.
There are other factors on multipliers associated with industries as well. So manufacturers will have a larger multiplier than would a retail establishment.
That's correct. At least twice as high.
Right.
Correct.
Right. Okay. I was referring more to the impact on the decision-making process by small, medium, or large businesses on a reduction in the gross receipts tax. It's a bigger, I would think it would be a bigger issue for a smaller business than it is for a larger business, but I just don't know if the data reflects that or not.
Fortunately for me, I just came into possession of some data at the very, very micro level from Dun & Bradstreet, which is very unique to academia, which I did some preliminary analysis on this without going into the stratification that you asked for. That prior research has had very aggregate data, and so they're not able to get that level of drill-down research that you mentioned or asked for.
Okay. Thank you. Well, maybe we can follow up offline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 10. Thank you.
Item number 10 is the report from the Department of Water and Power relative to the low-income discount program and participation rates. This item was continued from the meeting of June 22nd, 2010.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I understand there's been significant progress since the last meeting, and it would be my intent to ask you to come back in a couple of months with another report and periodically thereafter. But tell us what's going on.
Well, Council Member, we did answer, and you have the handout there.
Mm-hmm.
What is going in, obviously, with the current enrollment in the program, we do plan to hit 300,000 by the end of fiscal year, or end of calendar year this year.
Mm-hmm.
We are working with one EAP. We have already had a meeting with them, and we'll continue on with them to see how we can share the formats that would work for us. The implementing a massive research, we are, again, still working with the Southern California Gas Company's database to be able to look at that very, very closely, and some other targeted possible issues regarding some outreach in those as soon as we can cross-pollinate the gas companies with ours so that we can kind of pinpoint some additional areas, and we will do that. We do have some other outreach measures listed there in what we're doing, and we are continuing with our own literature. We're going to be doing it in a little different fashion so that it will stand out a little more. The Oversight Committee, we will have our first meeting on August 7th. That is an update to this. It's not July 31st. It will be pushed out 1 week to August 7th, and we are still getting the members for that committee at this time. Wendy, do you have anything to answer that? Okay. All languages are offered by LADWP. However, we in the contact center, we do have Spanish and Korean-speaking bilingual reps as well. But we do speak everything through a translation contract that we have. So if you call, we can get a translator on board immediately as a third party, and then we go through the contact center rep and the translation, and we basically speak any language that we've ever dealt with so far. And the contract does list all of them.
Okay.
We did some outreach with the other utilities. Some of the local municipals are not doing much outreach because they're kind of hitting the ceiling on their capability to spend for their outreach. But we do show SMUD what they're doing and what Edison is doing right now, and their outreach numbers. I think the committee's very aware of those numbers. We do list the costs, and the cost, I believe, is the last item we dealt with on the request from this committee.
Okay. The costs?
Yeah, the current cost of the program, the actual subsidy per customer, per low-income customer, we list that. We listed the current cost annually as of April 30th, and we did give a projection of moving to the 300,000 number by the end of calendar year and what that would cost us as well.
So if we reach 300,000 customers, the total cost for the program will be $65 million annually.
Right.
What is the amount of revenue generated from public benefit surcharge?
I believe it's close to somewhere between 60 to 65. I don't have the exact number, but it's somewhere around there.
Right.
62 million?
60, around 62.
So we're spending less than what we're charging?
Currently, we are spending close to 55 million or so, but we do have other programs we're instituting under that for that funding. For example, the giveaway refrigerator for low-income customers has been very effective in reducing the energy usage in the bill, and so that was one of the bigger programs under that too.
Okay, do you have a report on how you spend the
yes, we do.
Public benefit surcharge?
Yes, we do.
Could you produce that from our office?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And mine as well, please.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And okay, I appreciate the progress, and I'm anxious to see how the Low-Income Oversight Committee functions, and so we will be monitoring that very closely. Have I designated my person? Oh, well, I don't want to be delaying.
We'll be glad to take them. We're a little low on the scale now. We'll take what we can get.
We don't want to have a meeting with ourselves. So.
We each get one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Each council district.
Apparently you don't have one either.
No, better follow up. But.
Okay, well, then I would ask that you come back in 60 days and we'll continue the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other items on the agenda?
No.
Okay, then I don't have any public comment cards.
No.
Therefore, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Right. Well done.
Yes.